All right, we're going to get started a little bit late. But with my- Nope. Good. All right, Jose is not here today, so I have the pleasure.
I said I'll do the time.
Oh, goody.
That's with you.
Unless anyone else wants to do this.
You're doing a great job, Carolyn. Thanks so much.
I thought that you guys were all.
Tired of you?
Well, no, I mean, I thought you were all safe from me.
Mm.
All right, we'll start with a land acknowledgement. Since time immemorial, the Kalapuya people have been the indigenous stewards to our region, building dynamic communities, maintaining balance with wildlife, and enacting sustainable land practices. This land acknowledgement is a way of resisting the erasure of indigenous histories and to honor Native communities by inviting truth and reconciliation. Following treaties between 1851 and 1855, Kalapuya people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed to the Coast Reservation in Western Oregon. As we consider the impacts of colonization, we also acknowledge the strength and resiliency of displaced indigenous people. The city of Eugene is built within the traditional homelands known as Kalapuya Ilihi. Kalapuya descendants are citizens of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians of Oregon. They continue to make contributions in our communities here and across the lands. We express our respect for the inherent political sovereignty of all federally recognized tribal nations and indigenous people who live in the state of Oregon and across the nation. Agenda and materials review. Are there any adjustments to the agenda that we need to make?
Nope.
All right. Comments from board members and commission liaisons. I'll start this. BC Adams.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm very glad that EPD did not have to get involved with UOPD.
Yes, are we?
Yes,
Very much so.
and I appreciated your email
You're welcome.
following up, and I thought it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that was it.
Ellen, do you have any comments?
Police commission, I'm,
I couldn't go.
okay.
I couldn't go. I attended virtually.
I went, it was so memorable.
They talked about cameras again.
We did, we've been visiting the cameras, the use policies surrounding the use of cameras, for months and months and months, and we finally resolved that. We also got through a resolution, so the case that we heard as a group, sorry, I'm waking up, now. It's a long day, long day. Quorum came in right at the bell. Okay, so at our 1 or 2 meetings ago, we had a case with the nature of workplace harassment and a number of women. That made it, a report of that. The police commission had already been trying to get to language to just get a study underway, some kind of consulting outside independent review, just to establish whether there had been a prior study called the
First report from
first report from 2017, which was a performance evaluation service from an outside agency. And so after a lengthy debate, we did pass language that directed or urged the chief to engage an outside consultant and to follow up and to see whether the issue, I mean, it's kind of obvious, there's still, it's embedded and it's not just Eugene, and that is becoming clear, but what we can do to improve. And so that was an interesting insight into the process of police commission to get that language, but we got it. So that's the report from the police commission.
Great. Just hi, that's all. It's no new report.
Sorry I missed last month. Thanks for the note. It didn't make any sense to me because I hadn't read the report and I wasn't at the meeting, but it sounded very, very interesting. Sorry to have missed it. Not.
This is gonna be a quick meeting with both of us.
Oh,
Alrighty, commission liaison, Monique is the human rights, right?
That's right.
Okay. All right, training topic.
Do we need minutes approval?
Oh, wait, yeah, let's go back in time and do that. Minutes, this is why I shouldn't do this anymore. I never should have done it. Minutes from last month. Did people look at them and find errors?
Bernadette. I'm just kidding, he's more, sorry.
I mean, normally, I would abstain from voting if I wasn't here, but. given that we
Well,
all
can
have
you
a quorum-
defer? I'm gonna ask if you defer, because I didn't read them,
Okay.
so I can't in good conscience vote for them. I could read them now, and we could do it in a few minutes, or you could just do two in your next
I think we
meeting.
could
Just
just,
do
When
two.
I am
We've got
no
that,
longer-
that makes sense.
Oh, and then this is my last meeting as a member of the Civilian
Oh.
Review Board,
Right.
so I'd like to just acknowledge that
Yeah.
I have truly enjoyed serving with all of you, and it has been challenging and rewarding and a lot of work, and I've
Now you get-
certainly enjoyed working with the auditor and forging relationships with the department, and I'm continuing, I think, at the police commission, but I don't even know if city council have they
You were
even act.
appointed last night.
I was last night, thank you. So, all right, so I guess I am continuing, and Clay, you were you were in absentia elected to be the liaison to the police commission.
That's great.
We're all getting news.
I wasn't even here and I-
I just heard of my appointment and you just heard of your, but in any event, I'll see you there. But
Yeah.
thank you all, appreciate it.
you
Thank
you were here, right? You.
I was here in this meeting,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
I
you
still have to
were.
go to city council.
So you were here when.
Oh,
you-
right, you were here, I'm sorry,
No,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
Okay.
you're
I
sorry.
thought we did it to you, oh, yes, you
It was
were.
on the-
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yes.
And you got appointed too by city council.
Oh, there you
yesterday.
go.
Yeah.
Great.
Did we get a new member also?
Yes, do we wanna? Do I wanna?
We could do
wanna
that
wait?
later.
We can welcome them in July.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So you two get to like bone up on the comment that is usually has to be said at police commission. We're an advisory board. We don't get to wordsmith the, everything that the police commission wants the chief to do.
Well, okay.
Yes.
I'm excited to work with everyone. I'm excited to continue working with Helen. Police commission. Start up with. Welcome.
So,
that's all.
next time it'll be on the agenda to do May.
Do we need to move it to
No,
a motion? No, good, okay.
Thank you.
no, no. it's-
I knew we were just ready.
It
for the
was so
training
much
topic.
prep for the case was a lot of work, and so I didn't get to the minutes. That's my excuse.
I
Good
don't either.
excuse.
Can I use that excuse for not reading it? No, just- Yeah.
All right, training.
Oh,
time.
auditor's report. So yes, we did our 2023 NOAA report. We have copies. We can make copies for you if you'd like to take one home. But I presented it at City Council May 8th. Thank you. So it's posted to the web and it sums up all of our work from last year. Also, I should say, when we present this to City Council, we also have CRB come and present their annual report, which we help create, draft, pull together. So Carolyn and Jose were kind enough to do that also on May 8th. We got the entire 90-minute work session, which was a substantial period of time, but I think it worked out well, because in the past, we've definitely been rushing for time. So here we go. I'm not going to go into the mission and purview quite as much with this group as I do with City Council, because City Council tends to only hear from me once a year, and you all hear from me all the time, and you know very, very well what we do. But
We
just in case,
should.
our mission and purview are up there on the screen, and our focus is on accountability, fairness, transparency, and trust in the complaint system. So then we also have an organizational chart. Again, I think these are fairly familiar with this, but
I got rid of the. org
oh, you
chart
got rid of
because
that. 'cause
City
it's old.
structure change.
Thank you. That's
Sorry.
great. No, that's good
Didn't
because I
warn.
have in my notes, this is old. That's great.
Gotcha.
And then so these are our functions, and this comes pretty much straight from the charter and city code. As you all know, our focus is really around complaints and monitoring investigations. We make recommendations on adjudications, we make recommendations on policy and training, we report out to the community, and we support you fine folks, and thank you for letting us support you. So statistics, we received 371 total complaints. We had 266 complaints that went through to supervisor at EPD. So that means 103 were dismissed, which is the term sort of like for when in the process it gets taken care of. But when I dismissed is kind of misleading because it happens after a really robust preliminary investigation, because we have Lindsay and Rob on board. We're able to really take a deep look at all the complaints that come in, we look at all the video, we look at all the reports, we listen to dispatch. I mean, we have all kinds of information that we can use to really dig into whether a policy violation may or may not have occurred. And that way we can save a little time on the back end for the sergeants who end up having to take care of all of the service complaints and policy complaints and inquiries that probably would have made it through in previous years. Yes.
What, how many of, what's generally the reason why they're dismissed?
So the ones that I would say the increase is gonna be most in the no alleged or observable policy violations, because that means we've been able to exhaustively look at the incident and say, you know, there's nothing objective here
Right.
that could be a point of.
Like you may have had a bad experience, but it was all within policy.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. And even if there's like a disagreement or a tone, like then that'll go through, right? And so it's really just, if we watch it and we're just, if this officer did exactly what we would expect them to do, then we don't see the point in pushing a complaint through and taking up a bunch of folks' time.
So that's the
over
main
on
one.
the other end. Yeah, and then we also do have a decent number of outside of our jurisdiction, so that's either, it's very, very rare that there's somebody who we can't identify, but
Mm.
most often it's Springfield, LCSO, Oregon State Police, UOPD, another local jurisdiction. Every so often we get a wild card of like, for a while we were getting, you weren't here, it was Eureka PD in California did something that made it on YouTube, which is.
Because of EU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
PD and people
Mm.
really upset and told us. So, yeah, and then there's some timeliness ones, we've talked about the timeliness limits here, but for serious misconduct, we have to hear about it within 6 months. For less serious misconduct, it's 60 days. And then employee not identifiable, I said, is rare. Alternate remedy is also, it kind of depends, but that's like, I got stopped for speeding and I don't think I was speeding. That should be decided at a court level, not by us. So, and then we had 2 complaints that were administratively closed, which means we didn't have enough information really to go forward. So we administratively closed them sort of pending receipt of further information.
So that would be like if somebody comes in and says, an officer who was like tall and had dark hair said this to me and
Yeah.
did that to me. Yeah.
And then we'd be like, okay, that sounds bad. We'd like to look at it at some point. If
Right.
Yeah, so these are, well, this is the flow chart of sort of how our things go. For the most part, you guys see the allegations of misconduct, which is sort of the less dark blue on the right side. Second in from the right, anyway, those are the ones that mostly you all see. If there's an allegation of criminal conduct, it's gonna go to a criminal investigation with the EPD or an outside agency, typically an outside agency. We discuss with command staff, they keep us informed about how that's going. And who it's gonna go to, and then it gets reviewed by a district attorney, and then if there's prosecution, then there's prosecution, and if there's not, then usually it should lead to an allegation of misconduct, an administrative investigation where we partner with IA and do what you all are very familiar with, so it won't take up a lot of time going into that now. Incident reviews, I think you all have seen a couple, although I realized we didn't do an incident review meeting last year, so we might do one next month, but that's sort of a placeholder. It's where we look at something, we think it could be an issue, but we're just kind of not sure yet, and so we hold it as an incident review, which basically means it's with IA in our office, and we work together and we can take all reasonable investigative steps, just short of interviewing the involved officer. So often those get closed out as incident reviews, because we find out enough to realize, okay, we're good. And then every so often they get reclassified either up to an allegation of misconduct if we find out enough to know that we need to do a full investigation and we need to interview the officer. Or it gets classified down into an inquiry or service complaint because we realize someone should speak to the officer, but it's not serious misconduct. Inquiries are questions, as the name implies, or it can be a place where we put complaints where we don't really see a policy violation, or we don't think the officer did anything wrong, but it's better for that explanation to come from EPD rather than from us. So that's like if it ends up explaining like tactics, or this is how we do things because XYZ, right? That's an inquiry. And then service complaint is so-and-so was rude to me. Policy complaint is typically, well, policy complaint is a complaint about policy, so often we had a non-injury accident and no one showed up. So that's the one I hear about. most, at least. So those are our complaints. Oh, and those lower level ones just go to the immediate supervisor and then get closed out. for review. So I apologize. Lindsay came up with this a couple years ago and I love you for it, Lindsay. So this goes into the specific allegations. So it shows not just that we received, 371 complaints, but that those 371 complaints included however many specific things that we needed to look at. So this sort of is a better reflection of the actual work performed, the actual number of investigations, allegations investigated. So as you can see, we did increase last year, but we still didn't hit our all-time high of the hard year of 2020.
Which was the year of the.
That was 2020.
Georgia, the protests.
No, that
Of
was
the year
2020. But 2021 was the year that,
Wheels on.
I was alone.
And we had more, but why the numbers go up? Not because you were alone.
No, just because the world. No, I honestly don't know why the numbers went up that year, but
Oh,
they were
okay.
very, very high that year.
And you were alone.
And I was alone, so it was hard.
Yeah, no,
So,
I do
I'll
remember
leave
that
that
part.
whining about-
You were here.
I was out
Yeah.
from two.
Oh, you were alone.
Everyone left. It's fine. Just kidding, everything's fine.
Oh,
So moving on, point being, we did a lot of work last year. My team is the best. Hooray, I'm so glad to have one, always. So in 2023, we had 57 specific allegations of misconduct. Oh, sorry, this is the next slide. Against 20 employees arising out of 16 total complaints that were classified as allegations of misconduct. And then, the policy violations that were alleged in those 57 specific allegations, this is the next slide again, were mostly around conduct, fair amount of use of force, body worn video, neglect of duty, search and seizure, as you can see, and then kind of just goes down from there. So these are the policy violations alleged, not necessarily sustained, so this represents what we investigated for the most part last year. We talk a little bit about vehicle pursuits in the policy because there was such an increase last year. You'll see there's only 2 vehicle pursuit policies and policy violations investigated. And that doesn't mean there were fewer pursuits. It just means that only 2 instances were investigated as an IA. And then the next one, so I should say this was as of April 1st.
Yep.
And then when I presented on May 8th to council, I have updated these numbers. Sorry, so as of May 8th, 5 of the 7 open complaints have closed. 1 of them was still open as of May 8th, but I actually have not checked today to see what's on there. But so since in addition to these, there were 10 sustained between in the month of April, 5 additional insufficient evidence, 5 additional within policies, and 1 additional unfounded. And then, so including those. Oh, no, sorry. So there were 8 outstanding allegations still at the time I wrote this, and 30 overall were sustained. So the overall sustain rate was 53%. So 53% of all of the allegations that we leveled against folks were sustained. Which is pretty high across this field. I think it speaks to the level of preliminary investigation that we do. We don't open something unless we really feel like there's a need to. So. I'm not gonna go into all this. I have details if you want details on those cases, but it would take a long. We, as you all know, we don't have input into discipline, and so this is, but we are allowed to report out on disciplinary trends. So this is how we do that. In 2023, there was 1 employee with several sustained allegations. 8 looks like that was suspended. 2 employees who had documented counseling, 3 employees with coaching, and 1 employee resigned prior to corrective action. Real quickly, we did a pursuit trend analysis for all the pursuits from last year. It was difficult to keep up, frankly. There were, I think, 8, well, we'll get to that. Anyway, there were a lot of pursuits last year. So I kind of did this mostly for council because they don't hear from me as frequently as you guys do, but the risks in pursuits are serious injury or death to officers, bystanders, and suspects, also property and vehicles. And then in 2021, 525 people were killed from fatal crashes involving police pursuits. And there's various areas where you can get data on this. The Police Executive Research Forum had a really timely report in 2023, analyzing the pursuits across the nation. So that's where I got a lot of these.
Well, yeah, when they're throwing spike strips out at somebody going like 120 miles an hour and
Yeah.
not our state,
True.
someplace a little farther east and south than us, it's like, it's kind of not surprising, those numbers that
Yeah.
an agency would, because it was an urge like 40, 35, 40 that to do a pit maneuver or
35 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're doing it at like, it was like at 80 or 90.
Yeah.
To see these and it'd be like,
Well, I think the standards vary widely,
Yeah.
across the agency. And I think Mark and I, at one point, there was a number about of a third of folks who are seriously injured in pursuits are innocent bystanders. And then in that 4-year period, the number was 21%. So I couldn't find the third number that Mark and I quoted for years and years. So maybe that was, anyway, I found this number, so I feel like that's probably right. I would say in general, pursuits, like when we watch them, right, they don't generally end any way other than a crash. It's rare for them to stop in a different way. And so, yeah, we had 18 pursuits last year. And so, the important thing that we keep in mind are the risks of engaging in pursuits must be carefully weighed against the risk of waiting to apprehend the suspect and apprehend them in a different manner. I want to stress that when I talk about pursuing versus not pursuing, it's not pursuit versus letting somebody go. It's pursuit versus figuring out a different way to catch up with the person. So we looked at, there were policy changes implemented at EPD, and we were wondering if that was maybe contributing to the increase in numbers. And it didn't. It's not, we couldn't tell. As you can tell, they were increasing before that final policy change. Sorry, I'm looking through my notes because I talked about this a month ago. So yeah, we are still looking through some of these pursuits to see if some of them might have been misreported as pursuits, if they are actually pursuits, if they did conform with policy, if they didn't conform with policy. But we just really wanted to take a look at this trend because it's a pretty big change, as you can see. The policy in 2014, that change made it extremely restrictive, made it really unlikely that you would be allowed to pursue somebody. 2018 was a really minor change, and then 2022 looked at extraordinary circumstances and kind of widened that to include reckless driving. So basically, when we looked at the trends, there's a lot of factors that seem to be correlated to the increase in pursuits. One is the policy change, one is tenure of the officer. These generally are officers with less than 5 years experience. One is time of day, and as Lindsay points, Lindsay did the slides, thank you, Lindsay. These can be overlapping because the way seniority works out, often you end up with younger officers on night shifts and the same shifts because they get signed up for shifts in that way. So we've been talking to EPD about training, about they've already changed how they look at pursuits. So command staff is looking, or patrol command, sorry, is looking at pursuits as they come up. We're looking at them as a team in our IA, every other week IA meetings, which are the IA team, command staff, and our office. So it's been really good to have those conversations and just look at things as they arise rather, I mean, with 18, it was kind of hard to stay on top of them last year. So changes afoot. Let's see. Well, we supported you. You had 10 meetings last year, including 2 in-person trainings and 8 public meetings with case reviews. We've implemented our regular, I'm going to call them regular auditor newsletters because they were, for the most part, pretty good. I'm proud of my team for keeping me honest on those. Community outreach, we returned our returns. We brought back our public safety forum last year, and Beatrice is working on planning for the fall. We'll do another, and then we've rebranded it to
Spanish Community Resource Fair.
That's it.
Nice.
So that'll be in the fall, and I have in my notes, Beatrice is queen of outreach. It's true. Also, she fully took over the website redesign. She fully took over our materials revamp. So everything has been updated in the last year.
Which, sorry, I never told CRB that there's a new brochure for CRB, so I will send that out.
Yeah, Beatrice did that too.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. I saw that there. Yeah,
Yeah,
because I suggested an edit.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, you should, yeah.
And then our public portal, 19% of our complaints last year came through the public portal, so it's obvious that it's having, it's improving our access, I think. It's improving, folks' ability to access our services.
Are you finding, or is it too soon to know whether or not the portal has a higher incident or a lower incident of,
Dismissals.
yes, I mean, that it's like,
I don't know.
Walk-in traffic has the number one highest rate of dismissal,
Yeah.
followed by the portal. Phone has the highest rate of investigations.
from the public.
From the public. Postal mail also has a fairly high level of dismissal, but most of those come from the jail.
Okay. She knows that
She's
stuff.
so good.
I get curious.
Keep tally marks.
Yeah. And then, yeah, that's really that. Our goals for 24-25, we want to continue to work on accessibility, refining our complaint portal to increase frequency of updates to folks and the functionality. Increasing ability to communicate with folks through the portal. We're working on digitizing our survey feedback so we can get better participation and better data. Right now, we still mail out a survey with a self-addressed stamp envelope and people don't seem to really engage that way. So we're working on that. And then, what? Oh, sorry. One of the points of accessibility that we've already achieved is that we can do in-person intakes again. And we have one regular, accessible space for CRB meetings, which I think, helps. So you guys are in a predictable spot every month. We're continuing to work on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I think we've become a much more visible presence in the community. And we kind of constantly examine what we can do better, how to create a sense of inclusion. We're not doing like one audit, it's more of just the ongoing, how do we look at this? How do we make all of this better so more people feel that they can access our services and feel comfortable working with our team? Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm figuring out, and I do think that an evolution of the public safety forum is one of those things as well, to make sure people feel really welcome and want to go to that event, yes.
So-
You have a
Oh,
question in your face.
no, when you said the public safety forum, it made me think of that 12-person, 20-person committee that was coming up with things a few years ago.
The
that-
ad hoc
Ad hoc
committee.
Oh, Yeah, the ad hoc, is that still happening?
No, that
Oh.
dissolved in July of 22. Yes. 23.
Soon.
We did one last update, that was it, we had one last, Sarah and I met with it, offered to meet with everybody for one last update in July 22. So yeah, but the actual like term of the committee is
Yeah.
closed.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm doing there. Okay, we are working on collaboration around deadly force. I think we have some opportunities there to improve, hopefully improve the IFIT model. I'm excited about those. And then continue to deliver on our core competencies, excellent customer service, regular reports, and reporting out in different ways. We're looking at use of force reporting that we can present to folks, and just frankly, because I have a great team, I think we can start to give a lot more information out and really work on that transparency part of our mission. And then gratitude, we're thankful for you. I'm thankful for my team. Mayor and council, of course, because they let me keep my job. Police commission has been working really, really hard this year. And everybody else on the list, except probably the ad hoc committee, because they are not still a committee, but in general. And really, I would be extremely remiss if I did not thank EPD staff, because we have an incredible working relationship with them. We're able to get such incredible access to information. They don't mind that we're abutting them sort of all the time. Well, I don't know if you don't mind, but you don't show it. But it's really remarkable to be able to partner with the public safety agency in the way that we do. And I'm really grateful. I know that probably with different people, it might not happen. So, yeah, that's the report. Do you have any questions?
What questions did council ask? Oh, I mean, what was their focus and concerns, if any? You
Well,
I had
remember?
a lot of questions.
Yeah, I wrote them all down.
That's okay. I mean, if nothing
Yeah.
stands out, then it wasn't anything.
I would say the one thing I definitely remember is when CRB did their report, there was a lot of gratitude for Alan Lyman's work on both the CRB and the police commission, so.
I mean, all of us, but especially,
Right,
yeah.
especially, yeah. Alan got a special call out.
You'll get that next year,
Yeah.
Clay. Something to look forward to.
I mean, we've talked about, Counselor Keating is.
It's a double duty thing. Everybody who does the double
Exactly.
duty gets the
Ah.
attaboy.
It's a lot, but no,
It is.
I mean, Counselor Keating is, definitely is focused on the accessibility stuff, so he has some questions around that and making sure that our office and our parking and all of that is as accessible as we want it to be, and I think that is an issue, downtown wide about accessible parking and all that stuff, so we're working with our building on that, and then, I wrote down all the other ones and I don't remember them right now, I'm sorry.
So when's the move supposed to be of City Hall?
So I was able to meet with the mayor in her new office last week. So some people are moved in and some people are still under construction.
Will you guys be moving there? Because
No.
No.
No,
it's that
Um,
double-edged sword. It's like there'd be parking, but then you'd be out of the core. So
right.
What's the core? 8 blocks away.
Yeah.
Seems ridiculous
Well,
to say it that way.
I
but-
do, so the code requires, and the code again was written in 2007 when EPD was at City Hall.
Mhm.
So the code requires that we have a location separate from EPD, which obviously when
Right.
EPD moved across the river, it's been a lot easier to maintain that. But I do think it's important for our independence to not necessarily be seen as part of city government, and so. That's come up in the past, like when the city was sort of taking over the LCC space, and we talked about would it work for us to move in there as well, and I think. It's worked out, and and I think it could change, but in my opinion, I think it makes a lot of sense for us to stay separate from the rest of city government.
So since discipline was up there,
Mhm.
kind of curious, maybe this is a question for DC Adams. How is discipline? Is there any kind of matrix in the discipline? And is it related to other agencies at all, or is it just kind of? Gosh, this seems like what we should do. I mean, can there be any insight into how that's determined?
So-
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's organism
She
administrative
just
rules.
sent it to me, I think, because I was the one obsessed with discipline, so.
I see, I'm gonna carry it on
She's
for you there,
all,
Alan.
she takes care of the members of the CRB.
Yeah.
Carry it.
I think entitled discipline.
Yes. So there is the state passed Oregon administrative rules governing discipline for certain violations, right? So sexual harassment, assault,
Use of force.
use of force,
toxic
yeah.
use.
And so it says basically a presumptive discipline, aggravating factors and mitigating factors for a certain, I can send you those OARs. So there's that's statewide. In the disciplinary process in general, once something is sustained, the ERC, the Employee Resource Center, HR, weighs in with comparables from across the city. And my understanding, jump in if I'm wrong, but they give a range of disciplinary outcomes that then the police supervisor, immediate supervisor of the employee works to say, okay, this fits here or there, and then similar to the adjudication memos, it goes up the chain of command, and then they can agree or disagree as that goes out.
Oh, okay. So there are some steps and other people involved in the actual final discipline. I mean, obviously, the final discipline is decided by the chief.
Yeah.
But there's input along the way, just not from the
It's
auditor's
not for
office.
me.
But those OAR offenses, the discretion's taken away from the chief, or no? Like they have to impose the discipline
I
that it
would
says
say-
for,
Because of the mitigating and aggravating factors, I
Those
think there's
were-
still some room.
got it,
Yeah.
thanks.
They're also super new.
Yeah.
They are also super, yeah, I think, they became official, I think, end of 22.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. Any other questions?
I have a question about trends and dismissals.
Yeah,
If you track the percentage of dismissals compared to complaints like
Mhm.
last year's, and whether there's a change or whether it's pretty consistent.
definitely last year was more, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it stood out like as we were doing our work,
Mhm.
right? And so, and it was also something that has come up in discussions of just how do we really be an effective partner and help save some time from the supervisors? We've definitely gotten feedback over the year from supervisors of like, why am I dealing with this particular thing? The officer didn't do anything wrong, right?
Mm.
And it's been an understandable frustration, and so I still maintain that sometimes it's better for folks to hear the explanation from the police. I don't want to end up in a position where we are the defenders, because that's inappropriate. But if we can objectively look at something and say, okay, either this didn't happen how we thought it did, or, you know, X, Y, Z, but there's no policy violation here. Then if we can take care of it at that front end, then we do. And it is definitely more last year, and we could run those numbers to compare.
And then in terms of process, and I think you've probably told us this before, but I'm gonna ask anyway. Is there like an appeal process after that dismissal for people? Or is it writing to, you know, an elected official and sort of putting pressure on that way? Or or
Yeah.
does it even happen? Do people just
We,
accept the determination?
I mean, they,
Claims notice, I mean, they could
Oh, yeah.
always do that.
yeah, that's always an option. I would say what happens in practice
Mhm.
is typically if they get their notification letter, they will often call,
Mm.
and then either Vicky helps and takes care of it, or one of the auditors tries to sit down and explain, okay, so this is, we looked through this, we looked at this video, we looked at this, we looked at this. We've helped people, I can't say, we've directed folks, like if they want to watch the video too, they can do a public records request, there's ways that they can try to access that, and sometimes that can be helpful.
We kind of see those coming to
Mhm.
someone who just might not be satisfied, and that's one where we say we don't think they did anything wrong, but they're not really satisfied hearing from us, and then ask our colleagues at EPD to step in, so it doesn't happen very often.
We also have the form, the feedback form, so
Mm.
someone can indicate, like, and it comes. When you get your letter from us, it comes with a little self-addressed stamped envelope and a feedback form, so
Mm.
occasionally, if people are dissatisfied, they will tell us why and how, and that gives us a chance to follow up. Even if it's not like an official, like, please look at this again, even if
Mhm.
it's just like, I'm mad because I didn't like this, or I didn't understand this, or whatever, that gives us an opportunity to like touch back with people.
Mhm.
But that's another way people can let us know that they weren't satisfied with the result for whatever reason.
Makes sense. Did you talk about that in the city council? Yeah, I think like somehow indicating that it's like a more robust thing than just a
Yeah.
dismissal, because
Yeah.
that's my understanding is like, and then you probably have a conversation with some of the people
Yeah.
who are unhappy with that decision. I think that's an important thing to
Okay.
have as part of the process, just in terms of recognizing the effort that is
Yeah.
put into that.
Even without dismissal, it's just that.
Well, and
there's
I
a lot
should
of-
say, when we do the closeout, like we do an explanation in the letter, and so, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, and I think, I mean, what I did tell city council was. Just that we're doing so much more work on this front end,
Mhm.
and so, I don't know, I kind of kick around different ideas, I know this is all. It's not marketing, but dismissal sounds really bad, right, and it's not dismissed, it's not like we just looked at it and we're like, no, not today, right, it's a really thorough and exhaustive thing, so. I appreciate it.
We had the one, I don't know, maybe not quite a year ago, where someone came on,
Mhm.
made public comment, and then y'all watched it. And we
Yeah.
spoke about it at the next meeting too.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, people can.
I think that's the only time that's happened.
That's true.
Yeah, even statistics about that, like how many people respond or how many,
Yeah.
like, I don't know if you track that, like the phone calls or if you don't, like, that's a
Yeah.
harder thing to track, it's a
Yeah.
little bit more one-off, but
I was
if there
gonna
are things to track. So,
I know, I was gonna say, I think we've only had 2 complaint replies on my time on the board.
Right.
Where we have said, let's take a look at this.
Mhm.
And both times we agreed that it made sense that after
Mm.
watching the videos that why they came to their conclusion, and
Yeah,
so.
and I think that's just a helpful part of this, work,
Yeah.
to sort of figure out that it's not just a dead end.
I appreciate that.
And we do refer people back to their public ways that they can complain about it, so whether it's you all or whether it's city council, like there's those mechanisms that exist for. They should, for the sake of transparency, so that people can look at it.
A fair amount of them are court or civil and
Mhm.
outside of what we do.
Where people don't clearly remember the incident
Mhm.
for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Which then sometimes the public records request and being able to see things for themselves can be.
Totally.
There was a time where you guys would show videos with people. You'd sit down with them, wasn't there?
Sergeants.
Maybe
it-
is that what it was?
do.
Yeah,
Sergeant?
we aren't allowed to.
Okay, but the
Um,
sergeant during
I would say
those-
it has been offered a handful of times.
Okay,
But yeah.
Okay.
And that's one, I mean, there's a lot of layers that have to go in.
Sure.
Permissions to do that.
got it. Okay.
But I agree, that's usually a good outcome. Anybody else? Am I way over on time?
Nope.
Oh, good. Go.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I appreciate it very much. Should I do the CRB report? Just kidding. You all know what to do.
It's not on the agenda. We don't need to hear it.
Moving on.
All right, let's take a break. 10 minutes, 5 minutes for the. All right, we are ready to re-adjourn. No, wait, reconvene. Don't put anything I say in the minutes, just like ignore everything I do.
Oh, no.
We'll figure it out.
We'll bleep it out. Okay, case review.
Oh.
What?
Oh, I thought I was supposed to do something, but no, you're waiting for somebody else to do something.
Can I
Just
give
like
you
case
your
review.
review?
Bernadette, would you like to introduce? I'm sorry. I'm joking.
If Rob could get this screen up, I would happily
Oh,
do.
Pressure to Rob.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't meaning it like that. Just meaning, it's too small for me to read and give an introduction.
These paper part of that.
Summary of facts.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Everything's fine.
Well, I guess I should have asked, is there any concern given the complainant's previous status to current status being any kind of indicator that we need to be, yes, that we need to be
That's a good point.
super
If we could be
careful of?
circumspect in general about that, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, so
Oh, yeah.
location of the original
I
incident,
wouldn't.
don't mention that, okay. Got it.
Thanks, Bernadette.
Thank you.
I knew you should be chair.
No, thanks though.
All right, so. We've got our case summary. Our CRB case review. So we've got an allegation of excessive use of force, deficient conduct, substandard professionalism. Evidence, report submission, and use of force reporting. So summary of facts. So on August 5th, 2021, Supervisor A responded to a service call for a shoplifter at Winco Foods in Eugene, Oregon. The shoplifter was detained by Winco Foods loss prevention staff. When Supervisor A arrived, the suspect was handcuffed and seated on a bench in the store's loss prevention office. Supervisor A exchanged the Winco employee's handcuffs on the suspect for a set of his or her own handcuffs. Supervisor A waited for several minutes as loss prevention officers inventoried the items that the suspect had allegedly stolen. The suspect was uncooperative and Supervisor A decided to place the suspect in his or her patrol vehicle. Supervisor A notified the suspect that he or she was under arrest and going to jail. The suspect threw herself to the ground and struck his or her head on a desk. Supervisor A controlled and grabbed the suspect and dragged him or her approximately 15 feet across the office. During the movement, Supervisor A kicked the suspect. The suspect was uncooperative and tried to stand up. Supervisor A pushed the suspect down and his or her, the suspect's head, struck the floor. Then Officer B arrived and assisted Supervisor A with the placement of the suspect in the patrol vehicle. And in his or her IOA interview, Supervisor A stated that he or she didn't remember the particulars of the incident. Quite some time had passed. So for the allegations, use of force, that Supervisor A used force in excess of that which was reasonably necessary under the circumstances when he or she dragged the suspect across a room by his or her handcuffs during his or her arrest on August 5th, 2021. Use of force and supervisor A used force in excess of that which was reasonably necessary under the circumstances when he or she kicked the suspect while he or she was in handcuffs. Conduct. And Supervisor A's actions, demeanor, and treatment of the suspect were unprofessional, unbecoming, and brought him or her and the department into disrepute. Professionalism. The Supervisor A failed to use carefully reasoned discretion or ensure that his or her conduct was respectful during his or her contact with the suspect on August 5th, 2021. Report and evidence submission. The Supervisor A failed to submit a true and accurate and complete report of his or her arrest of the suspect. And finally, force response reporting. The Supervisor A failed to report his or her use of a focus kick that struck the suspect. So in our adjudication recommendations, there's 6. So auditor is sustained on all 6. And then the chain of command, so this is just the captain right here. I'll break it out when we go 3 slides past this one. Was sustained on the first one, within policy on the second, sustained on the third. And then unfounded and insufficient evidence on the 4th, 5th, and 6th. And then Chief Skinner sustained the first 3. When unfounded on the 4th and insufficient evidence on the 5th and 6th. So here, it was internally generated complaint. And so we've got the use of force reporting, but if you come down here to the adjudication recommendations, you'll see that the sergeant lieutenant had the one difference for allegation 2 where the captain said within policy, but the sergeant and the lieutenant were sustained. That was the discrepancy. And then we have the materials that we provided for y'all, the same as normal. Everything that goes into the investigation reports, the memos, everything that goes with it. And then that's it, and I'll let y'all take the line.
Thank you. Thank you. We will start with. Which one do we want to do? Do we want to start with general comments? Mine has 4 and you only have 3.
This is the old,
And it's a little one. Or should we just go straight to complaint intake classification?
we just combine and do both.
Yeah.
Do
And
it.
do both. in
There's
the
only 4 of
same
us.
time.
We can
Yeah.
say whatever.
Ellen, please start us on general comments plus intake.
Okay, so actually my
Classification,
general
whatever.
comment is a little bit of an intake comment too, because if I understood correctly, Officer C was a loss prevention officer at that store and then was showing this video as social. I think I read that, and I'm like, why? I mean, it almost raises concerns, like, was it being shown? Like, look at this outrageous conduct that I saw, or was it like, hey, look, you guys wanna see? I mean, I'm really curious, I don't know if I'll ever know, but that the whole act of that is what generated this, is bizarre to me,
I cannot,
sure.
no, and I don't, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but my memory was that, it was very much, it was a, hey, whatever happened with this use of force?
That makes
Yeah.
sense, so,
Well,
he
in the
asked,
investigation, it said
They asked.
that,
Sorry.
he was asked why, and he says that someone asked him as a loss prevention officer, what was like, did you see any bad conduct from
Oh.
police ever?
Mhm.
He
What
was
he
like,
re-
oh, I recall, like, the one thing that comes to mind is this thing, and then he happened to have a video on it. That's how he responded in the investigation.
Thank
okay,
you.
thank
Sorry,
you,
that's
yes,
way
thank you, that's helpful, and I missed C's interview, that part, so thank you.
Mhm.
That explains a little bit, it's internally generated, that, it's happenstance, I think that, that it happened, that the events you just described took place, but they did, and as a result, that this saw the light of day, and, again, proving that the intern, like, there are officers there are actors within the Eugene Police Department that see it and report it and follow up on it, and they're not just the IA people or the command staff, and so that's my comment about the intake and my general comments. Thanks, Clay.
Oh, yeah, 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 I'll echo that and say, I think, I believed Officer C in their investigate, or in their response to the interview and sort of what they. How they have grown as a law enforcement officer through training and sort of understood now in context that, the behavior that they witnessed a number of years ago as a young new security guard, like, did not rise to an understanding of that. It was not something that was appropriate. But now with hindsight, they do sort of recognize that and immediately reported that. So I think that's, I mean, just a process of growth of a person that you would hope to see over the course of a career, which is great. And then I did sort of have a question about classification, and I wondered how the determination for, is this the time when I can ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, not just a comment, okay, great.
Whatever you
I
want.
wondered how the determination to classify the use of force of the pulling across the room as pulling from the handcuffs happened, because there was discrepancy in the sort of understanding of that from video evidence and from interviews, and obviously from Supervisor A's testimony, how that happened, or not testimony, but interview, how that happened. And so I wondered how that language, that specific language was put into the classification.
It's based on my perception.
Okay, of the video, yeah. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I was just curious how that, yeah,
I
came
think
about.
there is room for a variety of views about the specificity of whether it was near the handcuffs or at the handcuffs.
Mhm.
Because I think the video is difficult to tell.
Yeah, it just, for me, it like hinged, the outcome of that allegation sort of hinged on that word. And so I wonder, like, if it should be broader in a
I
statement or like
100%
in an
agree with
allegation
you.
in the future, so it's not hinging on one word to make it a sustained in someone's eyes versus a not sustained.
I think, if I. I had to do some allegation writing this week. So no, I think this is something that comes up often, and I really appreciate the feedback, because I think it's an internal conversation. It's a conversation we have with IA often on like, how do we walk that line of being specific as to what we're talking about and not ending up in a situation where we're losing what is really a substantive allegation based on the wording of the allegation, right? And so I think what we tend to do is what Lindsay and I talked about for this one was, if in the adjudication process of it, like, it didn't matter whether it was by the handcuffs or not. And so it's a distinction without a difference to me. And also I understand that that's a distinction that some people are gonna try to hang their hats on, right? And so it's one of those things that I feel like when you're doing the allegations, you're kind of trying to predict the future, and in some ways, and you're trying to really be clear about what you're concerned about, and then you're walking that line too. So I don't know, it's a difficult dance, more difficult than it seems, and yeah, and yeah, I like the feedback. So anyway, sorry, I feel like I'm rambling. Okay.
I think those are the only two things I have.
So the two other officers that the complaining officer was talking with at a social event. I don't want to say their names, but does anybody remember those people? Okay, were they in the same hiring class? Or so both newer officers? I know one of them is newer, but the other one I don't know. Specifically,
I won't know publicly yet. No, I mean, I know who they are, but I wouldn't be able to tell you that.
it's at the bottom of page 18. Leah,
Okay, give me a second.
the very last sentence, actually, it names the other two
All
officers.
relatively new,
All of them are new.
all relatively new. I can't speak specifically the same class or not.
Okay, yeah,
All
and same class doesn't matter so much. It was just trying to understand whether or not these were basically three new people sitting around chatting about, what's the worst thing you remember dealing with EPD when you were working in this job, and that, that's what comes up. I wonder if there was ever any contact with the business. Do they know that this video from their store was done by the officer?
I don't know. Lindsay, do you know?
We interviewed someone from this, but we didn't ask along those lines of questions, no.
Okay. I lost that one. Yeah, I mean, I was a little concerned about the use of that for personal, personal use. I had hoped that it was actually, it came up during like a use of force training, like, you know, there was like, oh, hey, I remember something happening. This happened, what do you think? It would have been better than I think happening. I mean, I'm glad that it came out no matter how it came out. I mean, but it just seemed like that it would have felt a little bit better, that it would have made sense in the whole scheme of things. And I think I appreciate that these are newer officers and they brought it right to the attention pretty quickly and then took it right to their sergeant, which makes me go back to 2 cases ago when everybody's talking about the consistent harassment that was going on, that nobody in that case, right from the get-go, said, you just need to knock that off. That's not okay. And so, I mean, I appreciate that they did this so quickly. My question, and I don't know that this is necessarily, but I'll just bring it up now so we can remember to talk about it later, is how do we make sure something like this that wasn't documented, which is kind of one of the allegations, their failure to document something they were required to document. How do you make sure that they're documenting things?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's like, and so for me, when I thought about this, because I know we were talking about timeliness earlier, that, I mean, I kind of was surprised by the length of it. I understood the length of it. I would guess it didn't get dismissed within the 6 months because it wasn't brought up, but it could have been.
Do you want me to jump in?
Sure.
Okay, you felt like you were ramping up to something, but,
Nope.
so with the 6 months rule, basically what it means is that our office is supposed to dismiss things that are outside of the 6 months. The chief has the authority to investigate anything in the department regardless of timing. Correct? About,
Ish.
You don't have policy right in front of me. I think you're right,
yeah,
but I would have to look at that one in
Yeah.
specific, just to make
Yeah.
sure on contract and policy that
Yeah.
that's accurate.
so in practice, how it has been is when we have something that's more than 6 months, if the chief has had the discretion to say, I still want this investigated regardless.
Okay.
The impact is that there's no discipline available.
So unlike criminal cases,
That's accurate, yes.
okay,
We
so,
can investigate, but it's the discipline piece that we're talking about. If it's past our timelines, that creates issues for us,
does that mean it can't even be put in the personnel file?
potentially, yes. So discipline, you think about discipline, you know, that you think about written reprimand or reprimand all the way out.
Sure.
Offside of that is counseling, which is documented, which is not considered discipline. Could we potentially, depending on the circumstances, drop a counseling into an employee's personnel file as a result of an investigation? Yes, we could do that potentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
It'll make my daughter feel a little bit better too, because this came up in a conversation, not names or anything, but her position on why someone can't get in trouble when they did something wrong, just because it took a little bit of time
Yeah.
for it to come forward. So, okay, so that answers the timeliness intake. Because it seemed to me that a use of force not documented is an ongoing allegation until it gets documented, which means it should be within the ability to discipline because they still are doing something wrong because they haven't gone back and filed an amended report. Just a little way to backdoor, but
I think that's an interesting argument, and I think if I recall right, the failure to report was not one of the ones that was finally sustained.
right. Which
But
yeah, we'll get to later.
Okay.
I think with regards to the other part of the intake and the review, and this probably is just because it's only this case. When somebody's not an employee, when the incident happens, I think it would be easier to reading if they are referred to as their position on the date of the incident, as opposed to their position at the time of the interview. because it got a little confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
wishy-washy on how to address that.
yeah, and I totally get that.
Sorry, yeah.
It's just that it's like at one point we're hearing them as an employee and then it's like all of a sudden they're an officer. And so then you're kind of starting to get a little confused. And there was also a note that,
Interviewing an employee,
Yeah.
yeah.
right,
Interesting, yeah.
um, at the jail,
Right, they got the Garrett, or they got the Garrity warning and all of that, like, they were interviewed as them.
right. At the jail during the book-in process, the officer who I think walked in after the main dragging happened was asked if there was any force used against the person who was then being booked into jail. But that person wasn't, wasn't there for most of it. And so I guess I got a little confused as to, and the officer that actually used the force didn't clear from the incident for 4 hours is how I read this. And I thought, that seems kind of long. Is there, because it talks about the sergeant changed locations and then cleared from the call at 4:58, but the call came in at 0:32. So does that mean they didn't have anything else going on? Why would it take over 4 hours to clear from the call?
It's hard to say, since he was a supervisor, he could have responded to another call.
And you don't have to clear before you respond to another call?
Depends.
Okay, I mean, it's just,
Typically you would.
Okay.
But if it's something you can swing by the scene real quick and answer a question, someone calls you there.
then you feel like you're still on the case that you responded to and assisted in the arrest on, so you haven't cleared from it.
Rob had a good point.
Okay,
I can't remember, but Supervisor A may have sought medical attention. He had some abrasions
Oh, no.
He just
He or
used
she-
the,
on his or her hand, so may have sought medical attention. I can't remember. It's been a little bit of a while and
okay,
Lindsay handled this, but
And I don't.
just trying to help that,
okay,
that 4 hour discrepancy.
they said they used Neosporin and something else on the wound.
Yeah,
They didn't say that they saw it.
Yeah, I
okay.
don't,
All right, my final thing was, were there pictures of the injuries? Because I
didn't see him. I mean.
didn't see them attached in the file. I saw
Um,
to the person that said that they
employee.
didn't use force, but they
Supervisor, right?
supervisor, right, yeah.
See it on body cam footage. I don't remember seeing individual. photos of it.
There were photos taken at the scene.
Well, right,
I
that's
don't
what it
recall if
said.
They're in your packet.
They were
And
not,
you could
okay.
see it on the body worn camera a couple of different. two
Okay,
different
I guess I
views of
didn't
them.
look closely enough because there was some.
But the other officer
okay.
at the scene did, I remember, take pictures of.
Okay, because I just saw the gloves on there.
Hand.
Yeah, I
I
saw
think the only photos we have are the, like,
And
photos of
the room, right, okay.
the
all right.
supervisor did at one point remove their gloves and you can.
Oh, okay, all right. So. All right, I think I talked.
never. My turn. I was gonna ask about timing. Thanks for that clarification. So. Okay, I think, in the auditor's memo. I had a question about what this means where, okay, first of all. I am going to pick a sentence soon and stick to it. I will. The classification was good. I agree with that. In the auditor's report thing memo, where it says, I determined that the investigation conducted by EPD Internal Affairs Sergeant provided the information necessary to make informed decisions regarding the conduct of the involved employee, though I did request that EPD conduct a use of force review before drafting my recommended adjudications. What does that mean?
So that first part. Mark, like we've done that's like boiler, we've had that.
Right,
So
no, I know.
Yeah, so
I-
basically all it means is that it was provided enough information that we can make
Right.
a informed recommendation. And so basically this one, I think Lindsay was just articulating that we got the report, I think we had gotten the full report, or it was near the end, we got the report, and then we realized that a use of force analysis would probably be beneficial, and so sent it for that, because that hadn't happened
Okay, what I'm confused about, I think, is that three of the allegations are use of force. Right?
Sorry, say that again.
There, three of the allegations are use of force?
Yeah,
Two of them,
okay.
yes, two.
Two.
So were those not allegations before Lindsay asked for,
No, they were allegations.
so
We don't always do a use of force analysis.
what is the use of force analysis?
That's that memo that it was towards the end where it's the difference, I think it's difference of tech.
There's another sergeant. who
Yeah,
needs
just
it.
one.
A
Oh,
reasonable, sort of a reasonable. opinion.
oh, yeah, oh, okay.
There was a lot. This
The defensive tactics person, whoever they may be, takes, so basically, had this been reported as a use of force, right? So I'm gonna talk about what would normally happen. Had this been a use of force, then it would have been reported by the employee, it would have gone up the chain of command, they can look at the video. Often it's at that point when we're looking at a use of force, we're like, this one is raising eyebrows or causes concern. Usually it's at that point early in the investigation where we ask for that, because this one came in so weird. It was one of those that sort of by the end, we're like, oh, that would actually be very helpful, and it can help to resolve if there's a disagreement between, or it appears to be a disagreement between us and the chain of command. If we have another party look at it solely for that analysis. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. How often does that happen that you get to the end and decide to do that?
Get to, then decide to do extra
Yeah. No, I mean, do the use of force review.
at the end.
Yeah.
It's rare because the timing of how this all worked is rare.
Okay.
Like, I mean, Lindsay can.
I guess my question is, why didn't it raise those flags in the beginning of the investigation to do the use of force review from the beginning?
Because there wasn't a blue team file?
I think partially
that it?
because the way it came in was just very, like, honestly, I hadn't thought of it. And
Because-
maybe Lindsay had.
Because the officer hadn't reported it as
Yeah,
use of force.
So it just came in as this, my primary concern when it came in was partially the use of force, but a lot of that we hadn't seen it in a timely manner.
And when I read through the final file, I felt like without the use of force, the additional use of force analysis, I couldn't make a good recommendation. I felt like there was information that was missing to make a good recommendation.
And that
So I
didn't,
asked for it.
and that didn't come clear till you saw the
Correct.
entirety of the file.
Okay.
Okay,
Can I ask a question along those lines?
you
Because
may,
it reminded me. So the use of force report
Mhm.
really focused on the wrist lock being inappropriate.
Amongst other things.
Right, but I mean, it was just like, but that wasn't one of the use of force allegations, so I'm wondering, when do you decide to have use of force for each thing, in this case, the dragging and the kicking, as opposed to just use of force in general, and then it's all of these things, and then the wrist lock would come in later
Yeah,
to support that.
yeah.
Um,
Again, it depends. I mean, it's one of those where I feel. The standard is we need to advise the officer of what you're going to be asking them questions about, right? What is the policy that we think that you violated and in what way? And so it's walking this line between, I would suspect if I just came out with we think you used excessive force in your interaction with this person, that there would be a whole lot of objection
Sure, okay.
about that. And so we try to generally be specific. Sorry. And so in this case, and in this case, like, I think we kind of even talked about, like, is it worth it at this point to try to bring another allegation, and it
Okay.
did not seem worth it at that.
But I think it goes back to Clay's earlier point too, the way that you write the allegations is so important. It was like a number one lesson from last year was like, wow. You have to be specific enough for the employee to clearly understand what we're talking about.
Sure.
And vague enough so that all the things you don't know that you're gonna find out are covered. And it's super hard to do.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the use of force report coming so late was, I think, a big disappointment, but completely understandable, given, how all of this came. Because if the blue team report had been made, the use of force at the beginning, this would have been looked at.
and
I will say-
that would have happened when they filed the report, right? The blue
Back in
team should have
21.
happened. So that's where the reporting of it, like,
Yeah, so there isn't a use of force analysis on every use of force that has to get requested. So, but we would have looked at this in a concurrent manner, which would have been nice.
Because every interaction that an officer, an EPD person has that has a use of force, they are required to enter that themselves manually.
If there's a use of force with an injury. I mean, there's the policy in there that, but yeah, so the person involved enters it, they attach a police report, it's all of that stuff that gets reviewed by the chain of command.
Mhm.
And we look at it as well.
Yeah.
I will say, I mean. I think this was this DT sergeant's first use of force memo, and I thought he did an incredible job, so I was. As much as the timing was weird, I was also grateful that we got such great work.
From whom?
The defensive tactics
Okay.
sergeant.
On the review.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry, I feel like this is all stuff that I should know after my tenure here, but
You're doing great.
it just didn't make sense to me this time.
Well, I think it came in a very different order than typically they do.
Okay. It's also a finals week. So
Oh.
it's a big deal. Not for me, I'm not taking finals.
No, but you're getting the
I'm
vibe.
there. Yeah. Okay, Clay. Do you want to talk about relevant department policies, practices, and policy training considerations?
Yeah, I think. I don't really have any questions about it. I think, it kind of shows that different people have different takes on what happened, especially with the captain's review of the incident and not having a sustained second allegation, but I think it probably, like, from my reading, it sort of probably hinged on the specificity of the allegation as opposed to thinking that maybe it wasn't a super great thing to do. I guess my biggest question is on the unfounded and the allegations at the end are either unfounded or insufficient evidence from the chain of command and sort of how what policy nuance sort of leads to that determination, and if that's like something that can we talk about a little bit.
Sure. Well, hold on a second. Which one was number 3? Because I'm gonna have to just take a quick.
Three is conduct.
Thank you.
I got it right here. So,
No one wants to see me turn.
Were you talking about the?
Four
report?
was,
we have to be
reporting
talking about
and the-
4.
four was discretion,
4, 5,
like
and 6, the last
respectful.
thing.
So 4 was the one that we went with unfounded.
That's right.
And manual, okay. Yeah, so, first of all, this is ugly. So you watch this on video, this whole interaction is ugly, there's mistakes made. But there's some things, some nuances about this as you look at allegation number 3 and you look at allegation number 4. And even though it's clearly defined differently in both the adjudication memo and with Lindsay's, there's some overlap there. And so when you look at, we have the use of force, conduct unbecoming, absolutely rock solid, we're right there. But then we get on this other one and it's almost feels a little bit like it's included in the third one to me. And also I'll speak for the chief on this one. We just kind of looked at it and went, well, you know what? I think we've already covered the elements here on this one. And when we talk about unfounded, we think it's either within policy, proper, lawful, or whatever we would have. Those are kind of some of the key points of that. So that's how we get to unfounded on that one. That's not a specific wording issue or otherwise, I don't think. I just candidly, I think we should not even run this one up. I think it just should have been 1, 2, 3, and 5 and 6.
Yeah, and so for insufficient evidence for 5 and 6, I mean. I think I'm like convinced by the auditor's description of that, and so I'm wondering like what policy consideration or like what practice is relevant here that someone might not choose to report or might not remember to report something that is like, I think kind of obviously. I think chain of command agreed like, oh yeah, that's a use of force, should have been reported, but it's because the sergeant did not think that it was a use of force and didn't report it, and so there's this nuance of like internal processing that we're allowing for, and so I'm just curious your thoughts on that, yeah.
Well, if you give me a minute,
Yeah.
if it's okay, I'll
Okay.
kind of share some
That'd be
thoughts.
great, yeah.
So first of all, in looking at this thing in allegation 6 on the reporting of the use of force, I will just say I probably failed Chief Skinner in this regard because my understanding was a use of force report had been completed, but that the specific kick had not been recorded on the use of force report. So that was my understanding of the case. And in that case, when you're now trying to recall 2 years later in an interview, and I know that you would think, hey, I kicked somebody, or when I'm writing my report, I kicked somebody. It's not on the body worn camera, so if you had reviewed it before the incident, you wouldn't have seen it. And so unless you were actually reviewing the Winco footage, you wouldn't have known that you had kicked this person, presumably, and that's what we're hearing in the interview. So had a use of force report, what we were thinking is the use of force report had been completed. So we're looking at it going, use of force report's been completed, therefore ergo insufficient evidence to say whether or not Sergeant A should have remembered the kick, which I all think we probably would agree that he should have remembered the kick. But then we also have to be cautious in that, this complaint is brought forward and individuals are looking at a video and it's fresh in their mind. And so we think about, well, it's vivid, it's fresh in my mind, clearly this should have been remembered by somebody, but you're seeing something that wasn't seen by the officer previously, and then you're sort of reliving it over and over. So 6 probably should have been sustained based on that knowledge now that no boot and no use of force report was done. So I think that's an error on our part in actually being really granular on our review of this. I would say it's an error on my part. And generally speaking, the chief does a review and we'll look at, what I read and be careful. Number 5, we talked about insufficient evidence on that one. It kind of goes back to sort of what I was just saying. I mean, I think there's some reasonableness here that the officer in what he was doing there. I think there's some reasonableness that you potentially forget a kick. But the bigger piece of this is when you come into interview and you say, I don't remember kicking the individual. We've got to weight that a little bit higher. We just have to. And these cases are all preponderance of evidence. And so you think, is it more likely than not one or the other? If an officer is in front of us and saying, I don't recall kicking that individual, then we're going to stay with insufficient. So that's kind of the thought process in my mind as I went through these.
Okay. That's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah, so in terms of practices and training, I don't know that. It seems like the training is adequate because I don't think that officer was acting the way that other people that reviewed it thought was reasonable in the moment, and so I don't think it's like a.
there is one aspect, if I may,
Yeah.
of the training piece of this. And so one of the things that's missed in the DT review and some other stuff is, as police officers, you never want to stick your hand in between handcuffs. And that's how you can get some pretty egregious injuries. You're taught this, in that you never want to use the handcuffs as they come along. I believed he grabbed the handcuffs. Like you, I believe the handcuffs were grabbed and used as a come along. But when we're talking about handcuffs, you shift them around with your fingers in between, you get some pretty egregious injuries. So there may be some training follow-up that we can do on this, and I don't know definitively yet without having some further discussion, but there may be some training pieces that are takeaways from this. And then the other piece is a bent wrist lock while handcuffed can be an effective escort technique. You can't use it in the application that we had here. That's completely inappropriate. But it is a good escort technique to bent wrist lock or use a bent wrist lock while handcuffed, while bridging the elbow to move somebody along. It is actually very effective. So there's some pieces here. There's just, I don't know, there's a little overshare there. Sorry, a little training. But there is some pieces here that we could have been potentially better on that we'll look at.
Okay, that's good to hear. Yeah, I guess my reaction was that these newer officers saw this as an inappropriate sort of sequence of events. And so it seems to me that like there is some acknowledgement that is not how you would handle that situation. And so but I appreciate hearing that there is potential nuance to training that we. Yeah, that's all.
So are you saying that the wrist lock is a use of force that should sometimes would be on a blue team, and sometimes wouldn't?
Yeah, I absolutely would. We think of non-custodial touching, for example, that would be, I grab somebody's wrist, come along, do different things. That's not considered a use of force.
Okay.
Handcuffing in and of itself is not considered a use of force. But I would say when you grab handcuffs like that and you pull someone backwards with that velocity, I believe that to be a use of force, I do. And that's why I thought a use of force report had been completed on this incident.
Okay, so does it matter that they're pulled along by the handcuffs? I mean, if they're just pulled along by their hands, that still would be a use of force, wouldn't it?
Could be potentially, your potential for injury by pulling on the handcuffs is greatly,
Absolutely.
you know.
But is that the standard that we're just saying that it's like that only if there's an injury or potential injury is what the blue team folder is for?
Nope. Blue team folder is all about, and it actually, correct me if I'm wrong here, Joel, but I don't think it references injury or even potential injury. There's classifications of applications of force that would be reportable. So we talk about focus blows or strikes are obvious ones, hitting with a baton, a taser.
I mean, just displaying the taser is enough to say that
Yeah.
use of force.
Weapon
so-
display.
Right,
Show,
so,
show of force, not use of force.
Yeah.
In our system, those are distinct.
Show
So
of
like
force.
pulling it out and showing it
is
is
it,
different.
doesn't
It goes
trigger
into
the,
blue team, but
Okay,
it's
that-
as a
right.
show of force, not a. use.
so I guess that was my
Different
concern
bucket.
is that, and maybe it's because it got worded specifically the focused kick. But it just seemed to me that all three things should have triggered a blue team and officers, supervisor certainly recognized how they got that person from the bench out to the outer area. And that in that person's mind that they didn't feel like that was a use of force that required reporting. That's probably my number one concern walking away from this is that it's like, how often is that happening? I'm guessing not very often. I'm hopeful not, but it's like, if that's happening and it's not getting put on a blue team folder, that would really concern me and make me kind of wonder, it's like, how do we make sure that they're doing that? Cause it's the honor system, right? I mean, and we have all been very thankful. I mean, when Captain Durr came so many years ago and introduced the blue team folder, and I was like, what the heck is this thing? And why are people going to do it? I was surprised by how quickly it did get used. And it just surprised me to no end that it wasn't used in this one. So,
Yeah, if I could respond, just give me one more minute with this. No,
no, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
this is very early on into our team building the force reporting in the manner in which we were doing. So there may be some discrepancies as far as that goes. And then the other piece, very much to your point, Bernadette, some of this is always going to be a little bit subjective because we don't have, like, I poke somebody in the eye, for example, it's a use of force, but it doesn't neatly fit.
If you're
into our-
intending to do it, it's a use of force. If it
Exactly.
accidentally happens, then it's not a use of force. I
Exactly.
mean, but I think we all agree that this
Yeah.
was intentional, certainly the grabbing and pulling. I
Totally
think the reactionary kick, I'm not sure that I agree that this was a reactionary kick. In the way that I think the supervisor's saying it, but.
Yeah.
Thank
We're all
goodness for 3 people missing, so we can go
One
fast.
thing that gives me a little comfort as someone who reviews a lot of uses of force. It's really rare for officers to be alone.
Yeah.
So, because of the way that they do officer safety, oftentimes there's more than one officer there when an arrest is being effected. So that means that it's not just reliant on one person reporting it, but that there are other people who are watching it. There's other people's body cams. There's like these
Sure.
backups because it's pretty unusual for an officer to be in a circumstance where they're using force. It's not that it doesn't happen,
Sure.
but that kind of creates a little bit of a fail safe to the non-reporting issue.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's nice. I don't think I have anything to add. I think y'all have covered it very well, everything that I would have said.
I have a few things, to Bernadette's point about like, and to this point about the them being alone, they being alone. It's a sergeant and that is a little bit disturbing that, the whole action, the grab and kick happen and then nobody hears about it. That's a piece. I'm curious, this is a little bit of a non sequitur, but we saw a memo from the patrol command to the supervisor A outlining the allegations. Is that because it's not is supervisor A in the union or do we normally see that document? Like, this was like, here, you got,
Yeah.
you were given these, this is
Yeah.
how we found, I don't recall usually seeing that, but.
Sorry, you
Um,
said, the notification of the allegations. or the
No,
notification
of the adjudication.
Yeah, that happens,
Oh.
that should be included every time. Typically,
Yeah.
it looks like a duplicate, like.
Got it,
typically
it's got the
looks-
same name or something,
Yeah,
okay, understood, okay,
because it's
so I
like-
had been missing those, but that, I found that to be kind of informative. I have a question and it's legitimate, it's not loaded or anything. If you're already scratched, so you get scratched, and I kind of thought that the scratch could have happened from grabbing the handcuffs, but regardless, if you're already scratched, can you kick? Is that like within policy? Like, it can't be reactionary or anger or anything, right? It has to be in the moment, a use of force reasonable, yeah, okay, so, so I thought that, I remember reading that Supervisor A said, I don't remember, but I got scratched, so that's why, and then I don't recall the video. It did not appear to be a reactionary kick to me, and then, I don't know where this fits in, but I also thought, and then this is just kind of goes to the conduct that we're examining. I thought that the report of the head strike in the Supervisor's A report was really to cover the head strike that happened on the, when the subject got thrown to the ground and clearly hit their head. Because I really backed up and looked at the Winco footage and the body cam and really could not see a head. I saw no attempt to cradle the head. I didn't see any of the head stuff until I saw the head clearly go smack on the ground. So to me, that's kind of a report writing thing, and the yeah, the training is not reporting. I mean, how do you and I agree with, I think it was Clay and Bernadette, but it's encouraging that the young, the newer, I don't want to age them, they could be any age up to a certain age. Those newer officers, with the attitude, that was different, so. That's it.
Okay, with adjudication, when it's something like this, I always get really confused about how we do it with so many allegations. and-
I don't think you need to do the final vote at the end. I think we get it in the minutes. So I think that was done to clarify things and I think it just,
Okay,
I don't think it does.
I think there are cases that sometimes we are so disparate that it's helpful, but I don't think this is one. I think it's more the discussion. And given that there can't be, really much coming out of this, given the age of the case.
I mean, I
okay,
guess what I could offer something, you want an idea?
yeah,
Or do you have one?
no, I have no ideas.
I was just gonna, since we all agreed on the first three,
Mhm.
you can just say, does everyone else agree on the first three? And then let's have a discussion around what you feel about the last three.
That works for me, does that work for you all?
Sure.
Okay. Unless, are there any disagreements on the first three? I guess we should put that.
All
out there.
three should be sustained. The first
Okay.
three should be sustained.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there was only one
You
person
agree?
that said.
No, I'm saying for with
Oh,
us at the
right.
table. If we're gonna not talk about it, we should. If Clay's like, no, it should be unfounded, I wanna hear that.
I agree. that
No.
she's sustained.
Okay,
I made things different.
Yes, they absolutely
Okay.
should be.
I-
And
the fact
were sustained.
Yeah, the fact that somebody could find that within policy is kind of troubling to me.
oh.
The
chain
number
of
three,
command did.
that someone in the chain of command said that number three was within policy, and that, I was like. I mean, I think what made it so clear that this brought the, what is it? That, unprofessional, unbecoming, and brought the department in disrepute. I mean, it's like, I don't think you get more clear than as somebody who didn't work for the agency. Saw this enough that they videotaped the video. And then asked people about it later, like, this seemed really bad. What do you think ever happened to it?
Wasn't it number two
It
that
was number
was?
two,
Was,
it was the kick.
yeah, number two was found within policy, not number three.
Oh, okay,
Mhm.
all right.
But your point, I mean, your
Yeah.
point, no matter what.
Yeah,
But I also agree with what you were saying about the professionalism, in that it's like, I think the officer, sorry, supervisor was trying to be professional and in the conversations, it's like, as we often see with people that have some mental illness, you know, their tracking isn't always the same as everybody else's. And I think they were trying to be professional and trying to kind of keep it pretty low key. And then it just so quickly just like flipped for both of them, for both the person being arrested and the supervisor. So I understand the professionalism being insufficient and because it kind of goes into number 3, the conduct. I would have sustained the report evidence submission combined with the use of force reporting, because I think those are kind of the same thing for me. It's like how the report is written, being accurate and or doing the use of force. I think those two kind of for me are the same thing. I mean, I understand why they're written differently, but I would have sustained that because I think it's an ongoing thing until the report is corrected. And until the report is corrected, it's still an allegation, and that's what I would say.
You just go. You just go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was supposed to start, wasn't
You were, yeah,
Okay.
that was great. What's that? I think hearing you, that's what we call you now. Talk-
Called much worse.
Explain the unfounded. I think I agree with that. In the way that it's unfounded as an additional allegation to the conduct. And then I agree with, I think what you said, that 5 and 6 should be sustained. So agree with the auditor on those two. And I think for 5, I liked this part in the auditor's adjudication. While it's inconclusive that A intentionally omitted salient details from their report, their intentionality is not a consideration within the current policy as written. Therefore, does that make sense? I don't know, with all the trying
Yeah.
to not say names that got confusing in my brain.
That's we wrote it.
Go ahead. No, I mean like the way that I read it, because I had to
Sorry.
real time translate.
I really appreciated the way this evening Deputy Chief Yu stated how 3 was a no-brainer. That really meant a lot to me because when I look at this, the 6, I really kind of wearing the judge's hat a little bit, like 1, 2, 3, like that's what was the meat, that's what was needed here. 4, you give the officer something, you know, I totally get it. And 6, you acknowledged probably if you'd known that there was no use of force report. So, you know, I usually have some energy around the discrepancies or, you know, and in this case, I really don't, because I think that 1, 2, 3, it was really important and to hear such a strong affirmation that the conduct did violate the 3rd allegation was good enough for me. So.
Yeah, I agree. The nuance that is interesting about the captain's adjudication on allegation 2 is that the sergeant was using the kick to get out of a interaction that was sort of like a pain application from the suspect. And so I think if you believe that, I still think it would be used of force classified, right?
Yeah.
So I just think it's like, there's a lot of squishiness around maybe that particular question, but it still always should have been reported. And I think without considering the intentionality, it's really clear that it should be reported. So that last allegation, I'm glad to hear you say that it should have been sustained, sort of as just a procedural fact. Yeah.
All right. Closing comments? Yeah, about the case or about life in general.
The blinky light trailers that are all over town, what are those
Those
things?
are guardians.
Guardian trailers. So, just. to-
With signage at eye level. Absolutely.
It's like waiting for them to like trigger some seizures in people. They're so blinky, but anyway.
We have a fleet of 4 what's called guardian trailers. They're portable trailers. You guys have seen them. They got camera masts. And we place them in locations where we're seeing an uptick in crime trends. We have one at Temple, Beth,
Israel.
Israel right now in light of what's going on over in Gaza. And some criminal mischief and some other things that have happened to the temple. So we deploy them throughout the city as kind of a force multiplier for us, to try to help us tamp down high crime or areas where we're seeing crime uptick. Now, I do like to differentiate because every retailer under the sun now has gone out and bought similar cameras. Those aren't ours.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask. I was like, I was driving behind a store the other day and there was one back there and I'm like, what the heck are these things? Like, they're everywhere.
And the Guardian trailers store the data for 30 days and it's only accessible to the city attorney, you have to make a public records request if you want to see it. And the
Quickly.
EPD has said, we're not using facial recognition, we're not interested in it. And if we want to use it, we'll tell you about it.
Police
So
commission has discussed it.
that's.
Okay, so it's one of those things that's like, it's out there to hopefully deter, but if something big happens, you can use it to go and see what happened without having to knock on doors and say, hey, do you have any Ring cameras?
Correct.
Got it.
So
Okay,
If we had it
Thanks.
preemptively deployed to an area, I mean, generally we have one.
There are some downtown ones that are not Guardian.
Yeah,
Oh.
there's 4 fixed cameras downtown, generally around, oh gosh.
It's okay.
Peasy Square.
Okay.
You can see them,
Yeah.
they're marked, they all.
They have signs.
oh, it's, no, like I said,
Eye level.
I've seen them everywhere recently, and so I just, God, I just needed to ask that question. While I was thinking about it, sitting here, blinky light trailers, I wrote. So, thank you for that
You bet.
rousing conversation and explanation. Okay,
Do you have any more closing comments?
how to stop and catch, no, Crossed all my
I
own
hadn't
thoughts.
noticed that there are non-EPD guardians around. I'll have to pay more attention when I see them. But I had another closing comment about this case, and I think it harkens back to another case we recently saw that the theft amount was like $40 that time. This time it was $76. It's weird that things that are so like low level, for whatever reason, get escalated so high. And it's not always EPD that escalates it or makes this interactions happen, but
I think this one happened because the two loss prevention officers had to struggle with her and use force, and once they did that, they're
Yeah.
afraid of getting sued, and
Oh,
if they
yeah,
don't
yeah.
call and bring in the,
no, I definitely see why the police
yeah.
were there with how they were,
Yeah.
how the suspect was acting. It's,
Suspect have warrants? It's been a
and,
minute. since
yes,
I've-
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they knew that before before the police were called.
Been a minute since I've read it.
Yeah.
it's just an observation I had.
For
That,
us society.
yeah, a general life comment here, not,
And yes, it is I think it was that pursuit, the one where we said, where we were kind of like, you knew who he
Right.
was, knew why. But yeah, so sometimes that it is that same kind of feeling. I just want to thank you all, for putting up with me for 3 years and thank the auditor, and, I enjoyed my time with you all, and see anyone that wants to come to police commission and get
Well,
Chief Adams is gonna have
If
to
he doesn't
still
show
put
up at
with
police
me.
commission, feel free to come back and give the report.
Sure.
card.
oh, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for being,
Yeah, my closing
Double
comment is to say thanks, Alan, for the time you spent here. It was nice to be in a room where your thinking was part of the conversation, and
Thank you.
to sort of learn from that too. So I'm excited I get to hear your voice still at the police commission. And about the case, I think it was really interesting, and I thought there were really nuanced things that were brought out in the investigation, and in all the adjudications, and that there is this like, I don't know, firestorm of great thinking around these issues, and on each case, we only get to see one a month, and so it's just wild that there's so many resources putting in time and effort to this kind of a process. I think that should give our community a lot to sort of be thankful for in terms of how we manage our public safety.
you're not suggesting we do 2 a month, are you? Because we
No.
did that a couple of times. It was kind of
One's
overwhelming.
good.
Okay,
I don't get an auditor's report because I already talked so much this meeting, but I'm gonna jump in really quick and say thank you, Alan. It's been really fun to get to
Welcome.
work with you, to know you and
Likewise.
talk about all of the manner of things that we get to talk about. So I'm hoping that, that doesn't end.
Thank you.
she was supposed to bring me cookies. I told her to do it, but she didn't.
They did bring you your young cook food.
They did give me the
Yeah.
tofu
Wow.
skewers and cafe, so.
All right.
Okay, public comment?
Public comment. Have we public comments? Go ahead and do I have something to say? We accept public comment at each meeting. People wishing to speak in person, there are none. Those who are participating online may use the raise hand function to indicate their desire to speak. We will wait a moment to see if hands go up. And I see none. That was long enough. Yes,
Oh, if anyone's having trouble with the hand raising function, you're more than welcome to submit your public comments to policeauditor@eugene-or.gov and we will get those to the CRB.
it's not on here.
No, I know, I added it during COVID and then
We should do that.
Oh, and I was at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival and they do the land grant acknowledgement as well. I thought that was really nice. It was a robust one because it was being presented by a theater person. But yeah, no, I thought it was nice to, and it was a little bit different because different tribes down there.
Right.
But yeah, no, it was nice to hear it someplace other than just a public meeting. You know,
Oh,
to know-
and it's Pride Month.
Yes. it's
Oh,
Pride Month.
yes.
Let's talk about
Thank you.
that.
Happy Pride, everybody. It's good month.
I'm looking forward to Bernadette's rendition of the land acknowledgement next month. You're gonna get theatrical.
Yes.
Oh, no,
Just-
probably not.
sorry. Okay, this is not.
More
Bernadette,
time.
I apologize.
Okay,
Hey.
we'll meet July 9th. And I am going to suggest that we do a incident review, like a few boom, boom, booms. Weird things, right?
Is that when we have our new person?
Yes, we'll
Yeah.
have a new person. They likely will not be, they typically are not through the background check process quite yet, and I will be attending virtually.
So I.
Were you gonna all both head out of the country fair a little early?
No.
No.
Okay, then.
I mean, typically, yes. This year, no.
Okay,
Okay, so
Everybody.
we can
Sorry.
adjourn.
Yeah.
All right.
no, it's-
thank you.